Remember the promise I made. We will stop those drugs from pouring in, poisoning your children, poisoning everyone else.
9:30 p.m. Minneapolis. A U.S. Army general exposed. A sudden raid. Tons of drugs. Military weapons. If you want the truth behind this operation, hit like so more people see it. Minneapolis, 9:30 p.m. The streets were silent as 5 unmarked trucks rolled to a stop outside a dark warehouse. Their engines barely murmured. More than 50 FBI and ICE agents moved into position, tense and focused. There was no warning. A metal bar smashed through the side door, twisting steel. Agents flooded inside. A fierce exchange of gunfire shook the building for over 10 minutes. When it was over, the air smelled of smoke, chemicals, and fear. On the floor lay an enormous cache of narcotics, 2 tons of cocaine, 6 tons of fentanyl, and heroin, enough to poison an entire city many times over. Beside the drugs were military-grade weapons and armor. Stacks of cash were piled against the walls. Hundreds of millions of dollars. But the most alarming discovery was not the money or the drugs. On a metal table lay classified documents, names, maps, and signatures. At the top was one name, General Abdul Omar, U.S. Army. This was not street crime. It was a hidden operation from inside the system. And it was only the beginning. If you want to see who built this empire from the inside, comment expose and hit like. We have begun to drain the swamp of government corruption. General Abdul Omar, 56, did not begin as a criminal. He came to America as a child, joined the U.S. Army at 18, and swore to defend the nation. He earned respect in infantry, then logistics and intelligence. Commanders trusted his discipline and strategic ability. He rose quickly through the ranks and was given access to secrets, bases, and supply routes. Many believed he would retire with honor. Over time, ambition turned into something darker. Omar discovered that real power in the military was not weapons, but access. He controlled cargo routes, shipping schedules, and containers moving through strategic ports. Quietly, he began to divert them. Planes that once carried equipment now transported sealed containers with false manifests. Trucks with military identification moved through checkpoints without inspection. Behind those seals, tons of narcotics crossed the country. Omar expanded his reach through alliances with the Sinaloa cartel, CJNG, and armed groups in the Middle East. He created a network that stretched across borders. To protect it, he built a flawless financial cover. Millions of dollars were washed through investment firms, small banks, and non-profit foundations. The paperwork appeared legitimate, even though the money was criminal. The system was designed to hide the truth in plain sight. As his influence grew, he moved from manipulating routes to manipulating people. Officers, officials, and judges were bribed, pressured, or persuaded they were serving a national interest. One by one, they stopped questioning him. The chain of command fell silent. When threats appeared, Omar did not retreat. He allowed violence. Gunfights erupted in places once considered safe. Tactical gear, body armor, and military-grade weapons appeared in criminal cases. Police were stunned. These were not street crimes. These were organized operations carried out with tools intended for war. The man trusted to defend America had used the system to build a hidden empire. The betrayal was not individual. It was structural, and the consequences had only begun. If you want the truth behind Omar's secret network, comment, show me so this story reaches more people. The warehouse discovery was only the beginning. Files, maps, and bank records all pointed to one location, an industrial zone on the edge of Minneapolis. It looked abandoned, rusted fences, silent hangars, broken lights. But satellite images showed movement. Trucks entered at night. Heat signatures glowed inside, and armed guards patrolled the perimeter. It was not a warehouse. It was a fortress. Federal commanders gathered in a secure operations room. Maps covered the walls. Drones streamed live footage, and red markers traced routes of weapons and shipments tied directly to General Omar. Every entry point had been engineered to resist an assault. Guard towers, armored vehicles, hidden firing positions disguised behind empty buildings. The evidence was unmistakable. A report went to the White House. It listed seized narcotics, recovered weapons, corrupt officials, and blueprints of the base. The president read it slowly, page by page. When he finished, he stood and his voice was sharp enough to cut through silence. A general of the United States has built a criminal fortress on our soil. This is national security. I want every agency, every capability, every asset we have. We will take it down tonight. Orders spread across the country in minutes. For the first time in modern memory, FBI, Army, and more than 102 federal agencies coordinated a joint assault. Convoys rolled out of staging grounds. Helicopters lifted from air bases. Night vision goggles snapped into place. Soldiers checked weapons and radios. The atmosphere was not excitement. It was determination mixed with a quiet anger, the feeling of having been betrayed by one of their own. At 2:03 a.m., the strike began. Blackened helicopters flew low over the fields, rotor blades slicing through the cold air. Surveillance drones illuminated the perimeter from above, marking guard positions in glowing outlines. The tanks thundered toward the gates. When they hit the first barricade, the earth shook, sparks flashed. The steel bent, then collapsed. What happened next was fast, violent, and decisive. Agents moved in waves, shields forward, rifles steady. Explosive charges cracked open side doors. Flashbangs turned night into white light. Inside, the complex was a maze. Laboratories, storage rooms, reinforced bunkers. The smell of chemicals hung in the air. Careful planning was clear. Every wall was thick, every corridor narrow, every angle designed to stall attackers. But precision overcame design. Teams advanced with discipline. Room by room, hallway by hallway, gunfire echo. Armed guards resisted from behind stacked crates and armored panels. The fight was brief but fierce. When the shooting stopped, men lay face down, hands tied, weapons scattered across the concrete. Then came the true shock. Behind a steel door, triple locked, stood a production line, stainless tanks, conveyor belts, racks of chemical drums. It was a full-scale narcotics factory protected by military security. Nearby, crates of ammunition were stacked next to armored plates, helmets, and tactical gear. A second command center was discovered. Screens, maps, encrypted radios. On the wall, a faded photograph of General Omar in uniform. Medals across his chest, a handshake with senior officers, the smiling face of a man who once swore to defend the country. Now everything was exposed. The fortress has fallen. In the darkness of that abandoned industrial zone, agents understood the meaning. The night's victory was real, but the war was far from over. The fortress has fallen, but the war is not over. If you're ready for what investigators found next, comment ready and keep watching. The fortress had fallen, but its destruction did not close the case. In fact, the operation raised even more questions. What Omar had built was not an isolated criminal cell. It was a network woven into the machinery of government, a structure that reached far beyond a single complex on the edge of Minneapolis. When agents processed evidence recovered from the site, they were struck by how ordinary the documents looked. Contracts, procurement requests, fuel orders, maintenance invoices. Nothing about them suggested danger. Yet, every page connected to Omar's enterprise. His genius was simple and terrifying. He disguised criminal activity inside everyday paperwork. The markers that should have alarmed auditors were buried by bureaucratic language and official stamps. The deeper investigators looked, the clearer the pattern became. Omar never worked alone. There were signatures from colonels and contractors, emails with friendly greetings, notes scribbled in margins, approved, no delay, handled quietly. These were not written by gang members or smugglers. They were written by people inside the system, people who believed they were doing their jobs or people who had been convinced not to ask questions. Some had accepted envelopes of cash. Others were promised promotions. A few were terrified into silence. In meetings where whispers traveled faster than truth, one phrase returned again and again. Just sign it. The general said so. Federal investigators interviewed dozens of officers, clerks, and officials. Many struggled to explain how they had ignored obvious signs. One man said quietly without lifting his eyes, "You don't question a decorated officer. You salute and move on." That was the trap. Omar had weaponized his reputation. Meanwhile, the violence outside the paperwork grew worse. Reports arrived from California, Texas, Virginia, and Minnesota. Shootings in industrial parks, warehouses, and even near military supply depots. Surveillance showed armored vehicles with no license plates. Rifles intended for foreign battlefields were appearing in domestic crime scenes. Forensic teams matched serial numbers back to stockpiles under Omar's command. Every story felt like proof of betrayal. These were not street gangs improvising chaos. These were men trained in tactics, formations, and weapons meant for war. The shock spread through law enforcement. Local police chiefs demanded answers. Sheriffs called emergency meetings. One veteran officer stood at a podium during a press briefing and said, "This is not drugs in a basement. This is organized conflict. Someone is coordinating it." Behind the scenes, agents reviewed years of oversight reports. A pattern emerged. Unexplained shipments, equipment that vanished, fuel that exceeded mission needs. Each detail was small on its own. Together, they formed a mosaic of corruption. Even judges were drawn into the web. Records revealed decisions that dismissed charges against men later identified as Omar's couriers. Money traced into campaign donations, court orders that limited searches on national security grounds. It was clear that influence had spread quietly, deeply through layers of authority. There was no single moment of collapse. Instead, it was like watching a curtain fall in slow motion, revealing a stage that had always been there. What the fortress exposed was just the front door. Behind it stood a network that had blended into American life. Uniforms, badges, offices, titles, all used as shields. In headquarters across the country, a single understanding settled in. Omar's empire had not disappeared with the raid. It had simply been exposed. An exposure meant the beginning of a far larger fight. One that would reach into boardrooms, bases, and courtrooms before it was over. If the fortress revealed Omar's weapons, the ledgers revealed his power. After the raid, forensic accountants, federal auditors, and cyber teams gathered in a secure facility in Minneapolis. On the tables were stacks of documents taken from warehouses, offices, and hidden safes. At first glance, they looked boring. Invoices, shipping orders, consulting fees. None of them looked criminal. Yet, every page carried a silent message. Money was moving, and no one knew where it was going. The team worked day and night. Bank records were mapped across a wall-sized screen. Red lines connected accounts in Minneapolis, Chicago, Dallas, and Dubai. Every route represented a transfer of funds, often in large amounts. What shocked investigators was not that Omar had money. It was how clean it looked. There were no cash piles or secret suitcases. Instead, the money traveled through institutions that were considered trustworthy. Financial consulting firms, logistics companies, defense contractors, charitable foundations. Each of these businesses filed taxes, paid employees, and sponsored community events. They were part of the American landscape. Yet behind the legal paperwork, they filtered millions of dollars from narcotics and weapons sales. One analyst examined a transfer and whispered, "This isn't street crime. This is corporate." Every time a shipment moved, money passed through different layers. A fee from an overseas port, a maintenance bill from a military contractor, a consulting expense from a nonprofit. The final destination, a private account, often under a false name, often connected to a shell company. Investigators followed the trail across continents. Eventually, they reached a disturbing realization. Some of the funds originated from U.S. military contracts. That discovery changed the tone in the room. It was no longer a matter of drugs or guns. It was a question of national integrity. Money meant for defense, maintenance, and equipment had been diverted. Omar had turned legitimate transactions into fuel for his criminal empire. Every dollar washed clean made his network stronger. As agents traced the money trail, they found something else: influence. Judges who dismissed cases had received charitable donations. Officials who approved shipments had their mortgages paid. A retired colonel received monthly consulting fees he could not explain. At first, the pattern looked like a coincidence, but the documents in the fortress confirmed the truth. Omar had built a loyalty system. Some were willing, others were frightened. A few believed they were helping national security, but all participated. The lines between right and wrong blurred until no one could tell the difference. Then violence began to follow the money. Wherever funds were concentrated, conflict erupted. A warehouse fire in New Jersey, a shooting in Houston, an armed convoy stopped on a highway in Nevada. Each event involved individuals connected to Omar's finances. Police reports were confused. Witnesses gave short answers. One sheriff from Arizona said, "These men aren't drug dealers. They are soldiers." Public confidence began to crumble. People wanted answers. Press conferences were filled with anger. Families demanded to know how weapons meant for war ended up in their neighborhoods. Lawmakers asked why warning signs had been missed for years. Inside federal command, one conclusion grew heavier with each passing hour. Omar's empire was not built on secrecy. It was built on trust. He had used his uniform, his medals, and his reputation to move money through banks, contracts, and committees. The betrayal was not loud. It was quiet, bureaucratic, polite, and far more dangerous. The money trail did not end at one man. It led to many doors. And as each door opened, the investigators understood a frightening truth. The system had helped build the empire without ever realizing it. Now that the lights were on, no one knew how deep the darkness truly went. When the operation ended and federal units withdrew from the fortress, the scale of the crisis finally became visible. What remained among the broken walls was not only the result of a battle, but the evidence of a system that had been twisted from the inside. The materials recovered told a much larger story than any warehouse could contain. They revealed a strategy, a structure, and a power that had reached far beyond the building itself. The collapse of Omar's network did not begin with explosions or arrests. It began with information. Files from multiple states, bank records from multiple countries, and signatures from multiple agencies all converged into a single conclusion. An individual with authority had used the machinery of government to build a criminal enterprise. The discovery was shocking because it did not resemble ordinary corruption. It was organized, intentional, and designed to survive. Public reaction was immediate. Communities felt betrayed. Citizens who trusted the military as a symbol of protection now confronted the reality that part of that power had been misused. It was not simply the drugs or weapons that created fear, but the realization that the system had been exploited in silence. Trust, once damaged, could not be quickly restored. Government institutions moved quickly in response. Committees formed to review procurement procedures, logistics pathways, and contract authorizations. Auditors found irregularities that had gone unnoticed because they were scattered across different departments. What looked like routine paperwork, when assembled, showed the structure of a hidden empire. Patterns emerged. Matching authorizations, repeating vendor names, equipment that never reached its intended destinations. The consequences soon extended into legal action. Federal warrants were issued across multiple states. Individuals connected to transportation, contracting, and financial services were questioned. Some admitted they had followed instructions without examining them. Others denied responsibility, relying on the complexity of bureaucracy as a shield. Yet, documentation provided a record that could not be ignored. Transactions, approvals, and shipments formed a sequence that pointed to coordination rather than coincidence. The wider implications were profound. The presence of military-grade weapons in criminal incidents raised concerns about how equipment had been diverted. The spread of narcotics across distant regions indicated systematic logistics rather than sporadic smuggling. Local authorities recognized that what they had experienced in their jurisdictions was part of a larger picture, one they had not been aware of. The collapse of the operation created pressure for reform. Oversight was strengthened, audits increased, and new layers of verification were introduced. While these measures were necessary, they could not erase the fact that the vulnerability had existed for years. The events in Minneapolis were not an isolated episode, but a demonstration of how influence and authority, when combined with secrecy, could compromise entire systems. The outcome of the raids brought relief, yet also a lasting caution. A criminal network had been dismantled, but the method by which it had been built exposed a deeper risk. Threats did not always come from outside borders. Sometimes they developed quietly within institutions that citizens trusted. The fortress served as a symbol of that reality, a physical structure representing a hidden architecture of control. The lesson learned was not only about crime, but about vigilance. systems of power require transparency, and authority must be scrutinized as carefully as danger from abroad. The fall of the fortress closed a chapter, but it opened a question that remained unresolved. How many other structures might exist in places no one has thought to look? The collapse of the fortress did not end the mission. It only opened the map. When analysts laid out every name, vehicle, warehouse, and bank transfer, a new pattern appeared. The empire Omar had built was not centered in one building. It was scattered across the state like pieces of a hidden puzzle. There were distribution hubs in small industrial parks, safe houses in quiet suburbs, storage units along rural highways. Every one of them carried a piece of the network. Within hours, Federal Command issued a new order: strike every location before sunrise. Teams mobilized from Minneapolis, Rochester, St. Cloud, and Duff. Convoys rolled through the night on isolated roads. Agents carried folders with addresses, photographs, and risk levels. The objective was simple: move fast, hit hard, leave nothing standing. The raids began just after 3 a.m. in a manufacturing yard outside Savage. Agents breached a steel warehouse where crates of chemicals were stacked floor to ceiling. In a quiet neighborhood near Maple Grove, a two-story home hid a basement full of encrypted radios and false passports. In Rochester, a self-S storage unit held drums of narcotics wrapped in heat-sealed plastic, ready for shipment. Every location told the same story. This was organized, deliberate, and dangerous. Gunfire erupted in several places. In an abandoned factory near Shakopee, 6 armed men took cover behind machinery, firing at agents as forklifts and pallets became shields. After a brief firefight, flashbangs cleared the floor, and the suspects went down, hands tied, rifles scattered. On a highway outside Mano, a box truck tried to escape. Helicopters tracked its movement. Highway patrol blocked the road. The driver surrendered when armored vehicles closed both lanes and floodlights turned night into day. By sunrise, the list of targets had been reduced to crossed-out lines on a wallboard. The results were staggering. Dozens of suspects arrested, stockpiles of narcotics, seized communication hubs, shut down weapons, vehicles, and cash recovered. But the numbers were only part of the story. What shocked investigators most was the coordination. Every location had the same structure: shelves neatly labeled, security cameras pointed at exits, Reuters connected to remote servers. It did not look like chaos. It looked like planning. As the sun rose over Minnesota, agents returned to command posts covered in dust and exhaustion. They knew the raids had dealt a heavy blow. Yet the mood was not celebration. It was caution. Because even though the doors were broken, even though the guns were silent, every investigator felt the same quiet question in the room: how many more pieces of this empire were still waiting in the dark? When the sun rose over Minnesota, the smoke cleared and the gunfire faded, but the questions remained. The raids had taken down warehouses, safe houses, convoys, and even a fortress built by a decorated general. The arrests were real, the seizures were massive, and the danger had been confronted. Yet, the true lesson of this case was not counted in the weight of narcotics or the number of weapons. It was measured in trust. For years, a network had grown in silence, hidden beneath uniforms, paperwork, and familiar faces. It showed that the greatest threat is not always outside a border, but sometimes inside a system that no one thinks to question. Power can be misused quietly. Loyalty can be traded, and institutions must remain vigilant even toward their own. But there was value in the fight. Federal agencies worked side by side. Communities were protected. The system, though shaken, showed it could still stand, still respond, still defend. The future now depends on the lessons learned, stronger oversight, clearer transparency, and the courage to speak when something feels wrong. This story is not only about danger, it is about resilience. And the next chapter is being written by everyone who chooses to stay awake, stay informed, and refuse to look away. If you believe more people need to see this, hit like, share the video, and comment vigilance.